So what I was starting out by saying is, as you can see by or hear what she had just stated, uh, I would say this: sit down, buckle in, and get ready for a rough, rocky ride. We are nowhere near out of this yet. We're going to get our guest's opinion tonight. I think we still have what I've said for a couple of years. We're looking at a potential near-death experience for the country. Juan's talked about that for years before it's all over. We're going to come out of it. Won't last long. Um, these strikes on Iran are going to activate sleeper cells all through the U.S. So I would say get ready. You heard me talk about what is to come, but I do believe our guys are prepared. Our guys, in fact, I was told by one of my contacts, said that you have no idea how many special operations guys are walking around in normal street clothes in every state, cities in the country. I think we are very prepared for it in many ways, but others not. But let's bring in our two guests. We have former Australian SAS Commander Lieutenant Ricardo Bossi. He's been on here a couple of times, one of our favorite guests. We're going to get some really good information tonight because special operations guys at that level never let go of their intelligence networks. They're always talking to each other for a particular reason. We also have Gene Decode, another favorite here of this channel and everywhere else, came out of the Navy, and his information has been surreal for the last 6 years that we've been bringing him on Patriot Street Fighter. Of course, this is a tipping point for Revolution Radio. Gene Decode, great to have you here. I'm glad I could line both you up. Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, retired. Again, also a pleasure. Slapping a high five to Rhiannon because she's in the background setting all this stuff up. I want the world to know, there's firepower behind you doing some great stuff for you. And Gene's got an army of people all over the world working with him. It's good to have all of you here tonight. Welcome to tonight's show.
Rod, thank you for your kind invitation. Absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you and with the one and only Gene Decode. What a thrill.
I
Mr.
feel
Decode.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
Welcome, Mr. Decode.
Thank you, Scott. I feel the same. It's such an honor to be here with such a powerhouse as Colonel Bossi. I watch your weekly or many of your interviews and updates on Jam Media and all of that, and of course Scott for years now. So thank you very much for having me, Scott. And it's the first time I've really been on a podcast with Colonel Bossi. We did an envisioning a few years back, but this is the first podcast, so it's such an honor to be with you, sir.
Well, we are loaded for bear, except we got woolly mammoths here tonight with these two guys with the wingspan they've got. I don't know if there's any flying woolly mammoths they found yet, but it's great to have both here. So I'm just going to say, look, my challenge tonight is quarterback in this operation. Getting the ball off to the colonel and then getting it over to Gene and have you guys bounce back of what you're seeing here. I'm just going to be the chorus director here. So let's talk about what Barb just said here. Is there merit to this this sort of arc that this operation is operating under, I should say, or launched under? And does this information sound accurate to you guys? Let's go from there. Colonel, let's start with you, and then we'll jump over to Gene.
Sure, not a problem. Yeah, Promethean Action, Barbara and I think Susan Kakinda, just brilliant. These two, they've been at it for decades and decades. So if you're not watching these two from Promethean Action, get onto them as quick as you can. They provide a perspective you won't find anywhere else. That's why I don't try to compete with them, because they're too good. So I let them do their job and I dance around the other side. Now, what we're seeing is, first of all, any special op has got multiple levels and multiple layers. So you've got the conventional activities, not a problem, but special ops, they operate at a tactical, operational, and strategic level. That's at a low level, mid level, and high level. They don't always know exactly what's going on, but they know they've got a role in a larger piece. Now, what we're watching with Iran appears to be a localized Middle Eastern issue with a problem rogue nation, terrorist funding and supporting both sides, causing all sorts of dramas, destabilizing the region. But it's and from one perspective, that's exactly what we're watching. It is just a localized, it's of no interest to us. It's the Middle East. They're crazy, so let them take care of it. And that's true. But it's also playing a couple of other roles. In terms of, as we just heard from Promethean Action, the financial control by the Crown, the British Crown over the world, has been centered on a number of locations, and Iran is one of them. And so this is, as he said, this is now coming down hard. But the preparation for this has been not just militarily, but politically and legally. The preparation has been going on for some time. EO's going back to his first term have prepared the ground for this. Now, you've heard a million times, everything that DJT does has to be legal and lawful, and that's absolutely correct. He cannot just win because he's got the biggest guns, although as satisfying as that might be, that's no way to advance a civilization or a future. It's got to be predicated on a law, and that's what he's done. And so, what we're now watching is the dismantling of the key piece of the crown as they run the planet. They've been brought down in terms of their highest levels. The Iran issue is, say, it's a middle order mechanism by which the control of the planet was effected. So the controllers have gone, strategic controllers have gone. Now Iran has to come down. So it has both the local Middle Eastern perspective, it has the strategic higher global control perspective, because it was one of the mechanisms, as was Venezuela. Okay, that's another middle order mechanism by which what had to be done by the controllers was being done. And so DJT is one by one taking them down, dismantling them. He's doing it very intelligently using the Israelis, inverted commas. Now we know this is why are the Israelis involved? As Derek Johnson might say, this is for the target audience. So it's not Israel, the corrupted Khazar state. Sorry, it's not. Yeah, it's not the Israeli people. It's the corrupted Khazar state that's been pulled out of the way. But there are many demographic groups on the planet, Christian Zionists for one, that still believe that the Jews are the chosen people. Why aren't they involved? Oh, they're involved, so now we're on side. So DJT is cleverly involved enough of the key players so everybody, as many groups as possible watching, are in favor of what he is doing. And it's being counteracted by lots of videos coming out of Tehran and Iran generally, of people saying, the rest of you be quiet, this is not regime change, we are over the moon, thank you DJT. So it's a wonderful operation. It's got the social proof with all the social media coming out. It's removing the operational arm of the crown, which has been removed in a very practical sense, and in a military sense too, because military capability remained. And you alluded to it, and I'll end here. You alluded to the stay behind groups, sleeper cells, things like that. But once your command and control goes, the sleeper cells will operate on their own, but they have no backup now, and so it gets a little hairy that way. But she's Promethean action is always on the money, and she's exactly right in terms of this is the controlling element that's now been the last one that's being removed.
I love it. That's the best case that's been made for the validation of her works. I'm glad that you're very familiar with them. Um, you mentioned one thing, and I want to follow up with this particular comment. And then Gene, you can jump on the comment too. What's most remarkable to me here, Colonel and Gene, is this. Like you just said, quote unquote, the Jewish people are God's chosen ones. The world's waking up to that. That doesn't mean we don't love. I have many friends in Los Angeles, a number of them liberal Jewish Democrats. I was working elective, campaigns back then, and we always bantered, and we just had love for each other. We always had fun, laughed, poked at each other. We had a whole gym, a private fitness center. All of us, the trainers were all conservative. Half the people in the community, Jewish liberals, and we had so much fun. We bantered. We just made them watch Fox News across all three TVs every day, all day. They had no freaking choice. But the thing of it is this. The absurdity of it all took until the last 5 or 6 years for me to get that right. And everything about now, think about them when they finally wake up and have to come to grips with all they've been taught about themselves is BS. You can hit me with anything you want about talking about Jewish people. My life was saved by the second most important man in my life, second to my father, was Alan Davis, a self-proclaimed Ashkenazi Jew. He was in a motorized chair because he lost his ability to walk from a very rare disease in the world that only Ashkenazi Jews contract. But this man saved my life. I'm here today. Without him, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So this has nothing to do about Jews, Jewish people, whatever. But the reality is we've awakened to this. All right, it's a cover that they're hiding behind. Even the good Jewish people really are a veil of protection for these Khazarian mobsters to claim that they're Jews. Christ said they claim to be Jews, but they're not. They're from the synagogue of Satan. The leadership of Israel has been exactly that, as we can see. Now, high contact, high level Yamam forces. As you know, that's our SEAL Team 6 in Israel. I speak to him directly right after October 7th happened, day number 3, when I can get to him. These are wonderful, principled people, and he knew that this was a setup by the Israeli government to allow that to happen, allow all this to happen that day. That was a Khazarian operation from Netanyahu, the highest levels. Are we going to see this rectification, the world, of this veil that they created for themselves to hide behind, and even the Christian community still follows that track? We got to protect Israel at all costs. What's your thought on that, Colonel Najin? I want you to pick up on that.
Yeah, very quickly. The challenge that the Jews aren't the chosen ones will pale into insignificance when they find out the false basis to their Christian beliefs. Does that make sense?
The
Because
fall,
what has
okay. I think their
okay the
beliefs are different
false,
than mine, right? Their Christian beliefs are different than mine. They see Christ, as you look in the Talmud, they talk about Christ as boiling in a cauldron of feces, and Mary Magdalene both, because she was a whore. That's in their works. It's in their book, right?
yep, yep, and all that again, that'll just fade. The Jews will find out they're not the chosen people. They'll find out the Bible doesn't talk about a monotheistic God anywhere, and the books are out there. And I've said this many, many times. You can read Mauro Biglino's The Naked Bible. He's an interlinear translator of the Bible, Old Testament particularly. An interlinear translator simply means he literally translates the word literally. He doesn't superimpose any interpretation. And nothing in that book talks about a monotheistic God. It's not about anything other than one particular tribe led by a particular individual who wasn't a god. He was just a very naughty boy, as Monty Python might say. And it's been extrapolated into something larger than that. Then that's now superimposed upon the Christians and their beliefs. And this whole the Christian faith has grown up around it. And you can have how many sects of religion of Christianity are there? They'll all find out that they're all fighting nonsense. The one true religion, yeah, good luck with that. And distilling the essence of what Jesus Christ said and did. And I've said this with Gene before. He taught us how to live, how to love, and how to die. He was the best of us. He is the example. Now, everything else is just commentary. That's my very simple theology on this whole thing. And as the Christians start to lose the foundations of their belief system, the Jews lose the foundation of their belief systems, and it goes to the Hindus and, and the Muslims and everybody else. So any problem we have with each other will fade into insignificance when they realize their own story has been a one massive lie. And this is the last support structure that people will let go of. They'll progressively let go of their beliefs and their understanding what history might have been, and it's been changed. And the one thing they're going to hang on to with white knuckle grip is their religious beliefs. That's going to be the toughest. And so any competition with the others, forget it. That'll be nothing. When you look, and as I've said this before, pray to the God that Jesus prayed to in Gethsemane, and always pray through Jesus because he's the only one we can trust. And I liked your opening comments. You can only trust God, Jesus, and yourself. After that, it's a crapshoot. And that's the as we go through this next several weeks, months, and years, we're going to need something to hang on to, and that's the best advice I can give anybody. Pray to the God that Jesus prayed to at Gethsemane, and make sure you go through him. And then after that, it's you. You look in the mirror. That's the only person you can trust.
That's it. That's why Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And that's why we are supposed to focus on ourselves, connecting to source, God, Allah, the creator, almighty, Butch, Sally, whatever you want to name that source. I don't really care. People find a reason to fight about that. Gene, let's throw a little sand in the gears here on that particular aspect of the Israeli question, the Jewish question, religion, Bibi Netanyahu, and how do we break that back? A religion, wink, wink, non-terrestrial presence revealed in the world shatters it all. Tell me I'm wrong, Gene. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, as Colonel Bossi just said, um, this group of Khazarians, as I come to know them, the Aristana, that came and landed from an off world place in the star system Scion that they blew up their homeworld, so they came here to see if they can do it here. They landed in the Pontic Steppes in Ukraine. Then they started grabbing people and taking their names. And so the czars at that time, the czar said you have to take one of the three Abrahamic religions. They took Christianity, but they did Talmudic Christianity and kept sacrificing children to Baal. So then they were forced to leave there. They thought they got them all, but they left and spread out. And I think it was in the 15th century they came into Spain, and they were creating havoc there as they always do. And so they were going to oust them and get rid of them, and in whatever means necessary. So they became Jesuits and continued to spread like a cancer all over the world. And that's where we are now. With, if you take a genetic sample of pretty much anybody in the Israeli government, they're not Hebrew. They aren't even close to Hebrew. And so they're actually, if you really get a geneticist that knows what he's doing, he will find that some of the genetic material is not human. So that's a pretty telltale thing right there in and of itself. And so, the Schofield Bible, they wrote that so Christians would believe that they are the chosen ones, the Jewish, not the Hebrew, the Pharisees, as Christ called them, the den of serpents and thieves. And this is the group. Yes, exactly. This is the group that's screaming bloody murder right now about what's going on in Iran, because they're losing, as Barbara Boyd just said, we heard, they're losing all of their monies and all of this stuff, which, their holdings, they've lost all their monies already. That's already been grabbed from the Swiss bank accounts and the Vatican and the gold and all of that stuff. And so it's just absolutely phenomenal as Trump's, as the movie said, we're going to bring it all down, And so it's amazing to watch this happen.
Are you thinking about law-abiding citizen when he had him on his knees outside of prison? He said, "I'm going to bring the whole thing down. I'm going to bring the whole
indeed, sir.
down on top of your heads." That's what Trump's doing.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed, sir. So that's my weigh in on that topic. Back to you, Scott.
Well, since you are like the icon of underground disclosure, we obviously have heard from her that there's a whole treasure trove of Epstein documents, and many people think the 3 million that came out, 3.5 million came out, and then another 3 million, I guess, are going to be released if they haven't yet. From what I'm hearing, majority of these things they're looking at are emails and other things, videos, but the remaining huge segment are videos, massive amounts of videos that are truly going to be probably too shocking for people to even see. I think we need to see some of it to get a sense in our soul of the absolute abject evil that exists in these people in the world. So we have that, rip the cover off the ball, off with their effing heads, every single one of them. Do not let them on the planet another minute, because nothing good will ever come from it. I think we need to get to that point. But what do you think, Gene, about apparently the third copies, if I remember right, all of the Epstein stuff is on their hidden servers, for their weapon system against everybody to make them sit up straight when they want them to. Is that how you see it?
Yes, absolutely. And it all comes about, it's, as Colonel Bossia said, it has to be done legally, 100% legal. And it all comes about due to, I think the man's name was Schwartz, who was a child genius at hacking. And he hacked everything. He was building his own code at 6 years old and making video games and all of this. He went to MIT as a young man, and he hacked the server, and he was downloading it. And let me explain the server. The MIT is where the 3W started, and he hacked the entire World Wide Web, and he was downloading over 100,000 pages a second, and he got millions and millions, all of what the Epstein files, plus then a lot, because back in the 16th century with the East India Company, it was all done on paper, and then photography came out. They had pictures, black and whites, that kind of stuff for all this blackmail. All that was put into the web, and he got all of that. And so there were flags going up all over the world, and the spy agencies, Clowns in America, Mossad, all of those were trying to figure out where it came from, and the military was first. U.S. white hats, military, zoomed in on it, went to this young man's location, and they cloned everything. And they have absolutely everything on the cabal. You can imagine way beyond what Epstein, which is pretty amazing because Epstein is tied to absolutely everything. You name anything, DARPA, banking, economics, child human trafficking, gun running, weapons, nuclear weapons running, children, drugs, everything, even the massive amount of money, like I said, that was in the Vatican, that then Dr. Hayes came out and talked about on BBC, and then Catherine Ann Fitz talked about on Tucker Carlson's network. That has all come out to have been real, and that's where all that.
Can you mention what that is that they found in Vatican tunnels, Gene? Because I've talked about it a lot, and
Yes.
I want to hear what the numbers are from your seat. From what
Yes, it's people were saying I was making this up because I have sources that some people can't handle, and it was 150 miles starting at the Vatican underneath. It went all the way to Jerusalem, the tunnel system, but the gold went 150 miles. And it was 87, from what I heard, $87 quadrillion. When I said that, people are like, you're insane. That's impossible. I said, we got all our gold. I didn't say all the gold, our U.S. I'm an American citizen. That's U.S. gold. It was brought back on C5 Galaxies, and I gave the number of how much gold that was brought back. That's proven to be absolutely fact now. The rest has been removed by the Golden Dome using plasma transport technology instantaneously. And like you saw with MH370. So where they moved that craft instantaneously from where it was to over Diego Garcia so they could get those high temperature, regular room temperature, superconducting microchips that allow everything that we're seeing now. So combine that with the information from this young man, and you have an amazing amount of things. Plus, when they went and grabbed Jeffrey Epstein, not from a prison, I guarantee, like Colonel Bossi has probably said, and many others, if you have any clue about security risks, he's the highest security risk to every government on earth. Mm-hmm. He's walking into the White House. He's got all the things, same access as Obama. He's walking into the 10 Downing Street, same access as the premier. It's every country on earth like that. You're not going to allow that person. Military goes to his island to go to a regular prison system.
Exactly.
They look alike. They grabbed him. I would be surprised if he's still on Earth. He's probably in a space-folded base on an asteroid somewhere in our solar system, so he's safe. And but at the same time, what we've seen for the files that have come out is only 2%, and that includes the emails. And now they're finding, quote, finding, as if they didn't know they're already there from what I said with Schwartz and all these other things, that he's got containers and homes where more data is stored in most of the southern states that border Mexico. In other words, Arizona, Texas, etc., and California, and states abutting them as well. And so they're grabbing those too, and that's more backup of more materials. And then, of course, they say, "Oh, we found in a skiff in a bag." Yeah. This is for the normies, right? This is for the people that aren't awake, that can believe this kind of spy craft happens. Nothing happens like that in the real world, but okay, So now that's where we are, and it's not just videos, and I can't watch those. I watched the first two Frazzle rips with Uma Abedin and Hillary, and I couldn't sleep for 3 days. And it as a recent representative of the U.S. government said, it'll haunt you. It'll haunt your soul. It'll haunt your spirit. And so I can't go and watch those anymore, but they do evil that you can't even imagine. I mean, same thing with the technologies and things they create and do. I'm like, what? Who in their right mind would even think of doing what they did? For example, with the Higgs boson and CERN, which the Golden Dome eradicated that, saved our hide again. So that Higgs boson was opening up a transdimensional corridor to a demonic level of existence to bring in some really nasties. And the Golden Dome surrounded it. And this is back quite a while back.
Hmm.
This was the event that led up to the 2012 prophecy. And so what it did is it created at the same time it moved that, it actually surrounded a base off of the coast of Kamchatka, a dome, and it caused a supersonic event, a supersonic earthquake, which they said they've never seen before, to take out that facility. And it moved through the ocean. They thought it'd be a tsunami in Alaska. It was moving like light, and it just lifted the waters up and back down. So there was no tsunami at all. So it saved us from that as well. And then the situation with the Higgs boson, it caused 3 solar flares simultaneously that passed between the Earth and the Moon, and the Golden Dome surrounded that so that it would not do what the prophecy saw, because we are now on a different timeline. So back to you, Scott.
Well, I'd say just to comment on those videos, frazzle driven and whatnot. And I know for a fact, Colonel Bose, he's going to back me up on this. And this is probably the only way. People said to me many times, Scott, you've always wanted to get the United States Senate. That was eons ago. Once I realized it's a crime scene, I have no interest. But people saying, you know, where you are now, with what you've done at Patriot Street Fighter, you could get easily elected to the Senate. And I'm like, well, I've ensured that I'm unelectable by my language for the last 5 years. That was strategic. So if I ever had this brain fart and thought I might want to run, myself, because all you got to do is run any video from the last 6 years and say, oh my God. And besides that, you wouldn't want me there, because I would be working, I'd be probably threatening other people to pass this law. If we catch any of these people that do the things they do to kids, me personally, death by cheese grater. Tie them up, no clothes, and just go to work on a cheese. Start shaving them clear to the bone until they're done. And that would put me basically in the camp that these people would be in. I can't even imagine. I just listened to this girl talking about, Colonel, that they this one girl, this must have been, it came out in the 90s. It looked like it was a little bit of an older of a quality of video as they're interviewing her. She's probably 15, sweet girl. You can tell she's been through it. And she's talking about things that she was part of. They saw what they made him do. And she was talking about, in this one ceremony, they had this 9-year-old girl who's giving birth at 9, right? And so they have her on the table. She's giving birth to this newborn, still connected to her. They left it connected to her, moved it off to the side, and 370 men proceeded to rape this baby newborn till it's dead before they cut it, from chin to stern, and then they ate the entrails. I know it's horrible to hear, but I'm telling you folks, brace for impact, because this stuff is coming out in the open. 370. There's other things that she said about it, which I won't even say here because it's so disgusting. But there's no remedy for this kind of stuff for these people. There just is none. It's pure evil, and it needs exterminated. With what we see happening now in the Middle East, Colonel, we'll jump back into the whole Iran thing, because that's what has the most attention in the world right now. What do you see happening moving forward? There's obviously going to be, I was surprised that Iran, to some degree, they hit, Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain and other countries. We have installations there, obviously, in Israel. I honestly, caught me by surprise. I thought they would have said, oh my God, we fight back. They're just going to torch this whole place that contained these guys. What do you see happens in the coming weeks in this conflict, as the major operations that we can't see are going down to take down this element clear to the bone? What do you see happening?
If I can I just, before I talk about that, can I just jump in on that last subject
Yeah.
in terms of what Gene said? Who in their right mind would do these things? That's exactly the right question. Now, one of the most difficult concepts when I first got into this gig, and delving into areas, let's say, I'm trying to be a bit cagey here, that Gene might be dealing with, one of the most difficult concepts to nail down is right and wrong. Believe it or not, it's not easy. Once you start elevating your thinking, it's actually quite difficult to discern what's a lesson and what's wrong. But it gets to the point of where we're heading and why. What you just described, a couple of hundred men raping a newborn until it's dead, then eating its entrails. The shock of that, just the description, let alone the vision on that, is what's required to separate everybody on planet Earth, as many as can, from their current understanding of reality. Captain Kyle's got a great expression: don't put God in a box because you're going to be wrong. Well, you can't put life in a box either. Trying to think that we have even a scintilla of the entire nature of creation is just it's just the arrogance of the gods to actually believe that. So step one is to say to yourself, you know what, I'm learning like a newborn babe. You know, I've just managed to pick up 2 blue blocks and knock them together, and I think I'm the height of evolution in the universe. This is going to be hard, but it's necessary. That physical, emotional, mental, psychological, and spiritual connection we have to our construct must be broken. We're not trying to break people. The White Hats aren't trying to break people, but they have to break that connection so that people can then start to see the world anew, to be born again. I mean, who said that? You know, give it all away and then be born again. That is literally what we have to go through. Not everyone's going to do it for a bunch of reasons. That's point number one. Point number two, the nature of good and evil, right and wrong, acceptable and unacceptable. It is a tough one to nail down. But what we're about to be exposed to, gradations no longer matter. It is so beyond the pale that any sense of we as a species, human species, we've lost it already. And just think about this for a moment. And we've known about this for years. This is one of my first subjects that I kicked off with back in 2007 when I kicked off this little journey, was full-term abortions. And nurses would have this baby, it's born, it's survived the abortion, and it's sitting there dying on the table, crying and dying for 10, 20, 30 minutes. What species allows that to happen? What species has a mindset that says that's okay? What species legalize it? What species then celebrates it? Humans. It's not good, folks, and that is nothing compared to what is going on. And this is by design. The first thing that we as a species have to decide what's right and wrong. Everything's divine law. There's natural law. We've even broken natural law. No other animal does this to their own young.
Said the same thing.
Animals are pretty brutal. Yep. Animals are pretty brutal in the wild. It's not like Disney. We're all singing and happy and saying, isn't it nice to be part of the circle of life? No, it's brutal. And we've even transgressed nature's laws. Forget God's laws. Good God. And so the first thing we must do, and if this is the first thing we must do, and I believe it is, what are the preconditions for people to actually say, we need to decide for ourselves what's right and wrong and make it very clear. Now, this isn't God's perspective. This is just us. God's given us free will. We get to decide on human law. And my favorite analogy is, what's the speed limit in front of a school? Well, probably 100 miles an hour is not too smart. And we will learn by trial and error that it's a lot lower than that. That's sort of the human law that we're allowed to play in. But we need to start deciding, this is right, this is wrong. And then once we've decided that, give the power to the people to actually implement those and hold people accountable to those laws. So moral, and then the sovereignty back to the people at the lowest possible level. So there's a practical element to all of this. But the point I wanted to make is we're in a very bad place because we allowed it to happen. We have to now rectify that. We have to decide what's right and wrong and then start taking action to fix that. But we have to be stripped of everything, and this is going to hurt. This is the point we are moving towards, where we are broken from our structure of what we believe to be life on planet Earth. And I can tell you, and Gene will wax lyrical on this, it's nothing like you thought. Not even close. Not even close. But anyway, now back to Iran. What's happening next? Most of what has to happen has happened. if there's a
Khomeini's been gone for quite some time. I think you and I agreed to this last
yeah
year, probably in the fall. We're in a show. I said, "What do you think, Colonel?" I think Khomeini's already dead. They already got him. We are watching the movie. What do you think? We right?
yeah yeah, it's like Venezuela. The preconditions, all the preliminary operations before phase one, you got all the prelim ops go in. That's taken care of. The job's done. And now what we are seeing, and we've been saying this for a long time now, if it's on the screen in front of you, this is now the reveal of something that happened some time ago.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean there aren't real ops going on now. There are, without a doubt. We've had direct comments from people saying Dubai, confirming what's going on there. This is a scattered, desperate counterattack by the remaining forces in Iran. Nothing significant is left. Hasn't been for some time, but now they're allowed to see a small counter push by the remaining elements of the Iranian military forces, but nothing substantive. That's why it's been allowed to play out, because they've already won the war, and now they're showing the people what's happened. So what we're now to see is exactly what we saw in Venezuela: a short, sharp, kinetic element preceded by massive preliminary operations, and then the handover to the number two in Iran, and they get to run their own country. And this is where Barbara was correct from Promethean Action. This isn't regime change. This is anything but regime change. It's a short, sharp op, kinetic in part, or most of it's already happened. The conditions are set, and now the people can take over. And it's up to the Iranians to save their country. Now, if they blow it, if they cock it up, well, they'll get another visit from DJT. But now it's on their hands, not on the deep state, the CIA, the Crown, MI6, Mossad, and the rest of the cabal's architecture. It is literally up to the people, and they get to make mistakes on their own, which is fine. That's the way it should be. This is not only the easiest way for the White Hats to solve globally the similar problems, because Australia is just the same. We are so thick with Masons that if you tried to run the country now, you couldn't. You got to leave everybody in place simply because there aren't enough people to do it. Australia One, for example, our objective is to prepare the people to actually take control of their country. And as usual, like all these movements, there's a handful of us. There's just aren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
Why? People don't know what to do. They're lazy. They're more interested in going to the beach, the footy. They don't actually understand the problem. They lack the mental capacity to pick it up. They lack the skill sets to know what to do about it and do something about it. And so the next steps in Venezuela were the next steps in Iran, and it'll be replicated around the world like a ripple around the world. Iran needed pretty heavy-duty kinetic action. Australia won't, because we're led by a bunch of... I've got to watch my language.
Now, I'll clarify. This is Patriot Street Fighter. You be authentic.
Yeah. I know. I think I've got to take credit for actually lowering the tone of political discourse around the world, because, like you, I went full soldier very early in the piece. But that's okay. It actually paid off. But I'll use an expression here. In Papua New Guinea, I had a couple of years in Papua New Guinea as a young captain, and the name for homosexual there in pidgin English is sweet biscuit. So if you're a sweet biscuit, you're a poof. Now, in the military, that's just a name you call someone. It doesn't mean anything. You'll get a phone call from an old mate, and the first thing you hear is, "How are you, old poof?" Doesn't mean anything. But anyway, let's just say Australia's led by a bunch of Masonic sweet biscuits who haven't got the spine to do their work. And so the same thing's going to happen in Oz as happened in Iran and around in every other country. The filth will be taken out. The corrupted leadership will be taken out to a degree, allowing the people then to step up to whatever degree they can and start taking control. Now, the transition will be, in some countries, there'll be a martial law be implemented, because that's just necessary. Each country is in a very different position in terms of their capacity to take control of their nation. Australia, zero capacity. Iran, who knows? I think they're probably more energized and ready to go and start breaking down. And the sensible thing would be, like we're going to do in Oz, counties first. If you can run a county, maybe you can run a region. If you can run a region, maybe you can run a state. And if you can run a state, then some years down the track, you might be given the reins under instruction with a big learner plate on your face to run the nation. So watch Venezuela and how it's transitioned. Watch Iran as it's transitioning, and you'll start to see similar but not identical plans roll out in different countries, depending on their culture, depending on their political history, depending on the national resources that they can draw upon to actually start taking control. Now, this is going to take a long time. Nobody but the US is in a position to do it. Now, you guys are the leaders. It's as simple as that, because you've got people who are on the front foot when it comes to their constitutional rights, and you live and breathe it. Secondly, you've got the guns to enforce it, and thank goodness for the Second Amendment and the willingness of the American people to use it, because that's the only thing to save the planet. Goodwill and peace to all men is fantastic. Better if you've got a gun, though. And so you guys will get there first, and the rest of us will slowly, progressively, perhaps demonstrate that we have the capacity to do it. So that's what's going to happen in Iran. Watch very carefully. You won't see a lot of obvious US involvement. You will see, hopefully. That doesn't mean it's not behind the scenes. They'll be assisting, but in a genuine way, to help the Iranians decide who they want. Now, specifically on Iran, you've got the Shah coming back, the son of Reza Shah. Now, Reza Shah was he a good man? Well, he was better than Khamenei, but he had his own secret police, and it wasn't the best place to live for certain people, because it's a rough piece of the planet. So is the new Shah, is that a good move? It's a transition. Don't sweat it. Do you think the Iranians are capable of establishing a representative government tomorrow? No. So what are they going to need? A trusted face to transition them from where they are to prepare them to start taking control of their nations. That makes sense. So nobody's suggesting that the new Shah is the best solution for long-term governance of the country. But it's a brilliant intermediate step, because at least he's trusted, he's known, there's a history, and then he can facilitate the people and their first tentative steps to a genuine representative, whatever they want it to be.
Well, I think you're right. We had the Undersecretary of State under W. Bush, under Shrub. His name was Paul, not Wolfowitz, who was the guy who set up, he deconstructed the entire Ba'ath Party in the Iraqi government. Massive mistake. As you heard, you talked about, fired everybody. And he said, and Rumsfeld said that, there was no insurgency. Obviously there was, but when you deconstruct a country like they did Iraq in after the Second Gulf War and all that nonsense, you're right, it's total chaos. And if you look at it from their point of view, and this comes to mind from what a guy who grew up in Mexico who now lives in Nevada taught me during one of the campaigns. He said, and I'm going to get back to this in a second, he said, you Americans, you all think that Hispanics are going to come to this country and vote Republican because they're tight-knit, they have the family values that the Republican Party does, all this stuff. He said, you got it very wrong. They don't live multiple families in a house because they're so tight and close. They have no money. They're poor. They're destitute. What they do know is to get anywhere in Mexico, to get ahead, to work up the social food chain, you have to know somebody or connected to somebody in government. That's your only prayer, to have a higher, than a poor life, because they only have the wealthy and the poor. And I thought, wow, that's a paradigm that I just had shattered, and it made sense. And it's the same kind of paradigm that you would have about somebody that could be part of, the Iranian leadership. Okay, now if these guys are aligned with the mullahs and Muslim Brotherhood in that theocracy, there's no way. There's no way they can be left in this position, because to them it is an ideology. It's not about religion. And Laura Logan told me this weeks ago. We were at an event here in Dallas. She was talking about being among a bunch of clerics. Might have been Iraq, might have been one of the countries during these wars where she's covering it. She's with a group of them, and she was talking about the religion of Islam, and the group of them started chuckling, laughing, and amongst themselves. And she's like, what are you guys laughing about? One of the clerics said, Islam's not a religion. It's a civilization. That is as telling as anything of exactly. And we'll get to the problem here in Texas, because Texans, you better stand up. There's about 75 mosques within an hour of each other, roughly, here in the whole Dallas region, that popped up in the last 2 to 3 years that Abbott has allowed to have happen. So we got a huge problem. But let's get back to the Iranian government. There's going to be a number.
Yes. Can I just quickly, one other aspect to the next sort of few days in terms of Iran. There are a number of countries that will suffer dramatically if the Straits of Hormuz are not opened, because the Straits of Hormuz, it's something like 90% of the Saudi oil goes through. I think it's of UAE, maybe 70 odd percent, plus or minus a bit, goes through the Straits. So imagine losing that much of your foreign income. That's going to affect both Saudi and UAE. Then you've got the buyers of oil that come through, and you've got India, China, Japan, and Pakistan, all heavily reliant upon oil that comes through the Straits of Hormuz. And as you know, 20% of the oil goes through that 30-kilometer stretch of water. It's a critical place. It's like a parking lot with the ships there. Um, all of those countries, and think of the flow-on effect. India goes down economically or industrially, China goes down, and all of a sudden Japan goes down, the bond holdings, you name it, and there's this trickle effect. And people believe that interdependence economically prevented wars. But what it really did was it established the conditions required for blackmail. Unless you do what we want, we're going to cut off your oil. And so there's this change of mindset that now has to happen. But the bottom line out of this is the good guys cannot allow the Straits of Hormuz to remain closed for too long. Otherwise, the downstream effects, the catastrophic effect on economies, on the financial system, on employment, if it is allowed to suffer too long, the recovery will be undoable. And so it will have a catastrophic effect regionally, which will then flow on globally. And the black hats, the white hats rather, cannot afford to allow these supply chains, the flow, the business, the employment, the capital to be held up for too long. So if people are looking for how long is this going to last, a sort of a time frame, that's one of the major considerations. Because as I said, once you turn this thing off, if it stays off for too long, you just can't turn it back on again and expect the whole system to start running. It won't happen that way. So that's a real issue for the white hats.
Yeah, and honestly, to support that, folks, to understand what happens is because of that lack of economics, you have a breakdown of social services. The population explodes into anarchy. You can't put that genie back in a bottle. That's what leads to failed states. When it
No.
gets out of control, it's over. You are not going to go in there and try to put a piece of that together. You're talking years, and I agree with you. That's the greatest danger. The point about the Iranians that are still in power, to some degree, I don't distrust all of them because, like any government, there are good people, and our military intelligence back channel told all of us there are more good people in government than bad, way more good than bad. You just have the top echelons, but the good people who are in there, they are in there because it's the only option they have on the track that they went down, not knowing it was going to lead to where it got. And I think some of them just kind of went along to get along. Those are people you probably can trust. And you know this, Colonel, once you have a move on a dictatorial power, you're going to see many high level generals are going to say, we have a chance. They've been talking amongst themselves probably for years. We have a chance for two reasons. This guy's now so weak, we can take him down, and or
Mm.
I'm in deep too as a general. And what I did, I'm going to turn on him anyways and try to sell it that I'm one of the good guys taking this bad guy down to save my own. Regardless of which of those two are in play, they're necessary and they're always effective. And as you said, as time goes on and the people learn, they'll realize and see who the good people are, and they can bring in that change of guard at a speed with which a nation can absorb it without too much cultural shift causing the collapse. But I'll tell you one thing, I do want to see Iran have a massive wrecking ball pendulum come right back and shatter the idea of the burqa and women walking around with only this much of them showing. All of that. I mean, take them back to the 70s where they look like the United States. Women could operate freely. They're not being beaten by hoses with by their husbands who couldn't even he couldn't fight away he couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag, but he'll beat up on a woman or stoning him to death for being raped. All that nonsense that could be washed away. I'd like to see that culture return to what it was. And the idiots that are dancing in the U.S., the MTPs and the leftist lunatics, because the women are now going to be free over there. It's crazy. The women are dancing in the streets because they're finally going to be freed. So I'm looking for that massive shift to happen. So, Gene, now that we see this whole thing, there's this evolution now in the Middle East. It's what we've been waiting for. Colonel's right. America's first. Once we get it done here, we export it. I think number 2 is Asia, Europe. I forget, and then I don't know what number 4 is. Number 5, as they said, saving Israel for last. That is going to be a cataclysmic progression that is going to happen, I believe, way faster than we can even imagine. Because anytime somebody gets control of an area, situation, whatever, for the good, everybody else looks at it. Look what they just did. Look what they just did to the scumbags that have been destroying their country. And what if they stand up? And then they go, because the template's already out of the box, and then they go. And they start, and they see another nation doing it. Hey, our scumbags did the same thing. Let's go. And I think it just starts banging out like popcorn. It's not going to be the rest of our life to get there. I could be wrong, but I'll take your input on that, Gene.
Yeah, so I want to segue back to a few things to clarify a few things from to the very beginning and work my way forward here. So, on there being a God, the one God of all creation, in my death experience, like you said, Scott, God is within. One minute I'm looking out my eyes to the apartment studio, the apartment I was in. The next instant, I'm looking down on the Milky Way, and everything everywhere is inside me. And God said from within me, as everything everywhere, because I said, "What just happened? You just died." So the entire, it's like in What the Bleep Do We Know? There is no out there, out there. It's all in there. And so all of that is within us. And all of the entire metaverse is actually a better term. So then also going next to what you said, Scott, about the girl that they disemboweled and ate the entrails, including what's inside, without cleaning them to get
that's what I didn't bring up. Exactly.
Yeah, get disgusting to show how disgusting these people are. They're not just evil; they're sick and disgusting. I mean, what kind of animal does that? It's like, as Colonel Bossy knows, I ask questions that can't really be answered, or he can answer. Then going to what's happening, the movie that we're watching. I knew that this was going to happen. He always does it on Friday and Saturday or the weekend. And because the earthquakes, explosions, whatever you want to put them, underground, that we're taking out facilities underground, going all the way down close to one of their shipping areas for the children and the other things they ship out of there, including the achrome. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this because I don't speak the language, but and it's got all kinds of accents and things. AJJABAD Hajabad. That's near the Straits of Hormuz, and that's where they would tie things up right there. So, and I'll segue back to that as I end here with Israel for last. But on Khomeini and his people need to go and listen to what he said about what a woman is and how stupid his comment really is if you think about it. But he said women are animals. For men, they look like men, humans, because for our pleasure. And we use them like a dog or a camel or a pig. Mm-hmm. And so the stupidity of that comment is just mind-boggling, because you came from a woman. So if your father mated with an animal, what does that make you? You're at least half animal. So how much better are you? Go ahead, Scott.
In fact, a lot of those leftist lunatics out there protesting, I mean, they make a clear case for it. The majority of them are actually roadkills.
Exactly.
Look at it.
That's about how much brain they got functioning. And then, on the women dancing in in Iran, the women are dancing without all that Habib and all that other stuff. They're dancing like they were before all this started. You can see them in shorts, and it was awesome. So some of them are the young people in the universities and things are already taking back their way of life. And there's a video got sent to me on a young man said, they're burning the mosques in Iran too. And people are like, you're destroying your religion. He goes, we are not Islamic. We are not an Islamic nation. We were taken over by this terrorist group. And so, as Trump said, and other people have said, pretty much everything bad has come in the Middle East has come out of Iran. You talk Hezbollah, or just go down your terrorist organizations. Everything that's in there, all of what happened October 7th, all of that, what back that, that's all Iran. So it is, as Barbara Boyd said, you cannot have a country like that with nuclear weapons at their disposal. They're not going to stop. He gave them many, many chances. They're not going to stop. So that's the part of the movie. But I knew with the underground facilities being taken out that we were going to see and Israel helping with that. But that's because he is held hostage. As Colonel Bossi said, they have the leverage, or so to speak, the goods on him. And
Who's held hostage, Gene? Who's held hostage?
Bibi Netanyahu, which is not his name. It's not his name. It's the name he
No,
took to make it seem Hebrew.
the guy's from Poland. I mean, he was born in Poland. I forget his Polish name. He's Khazarian, sure, but he's not Jewish. He's not Hebrew. Gordon Duff, in his research, I read his research years ago. He said, look, and that's where I learned about the Khazarian Mafia. He said, look, 3% of the people that claim to be Jews, only 3% have the ancient Hebrew DNA. 80% of the Palestinians have the ancient Hebrew DNA. And the question is, who are the real Semites and anti-Semites? Now, this is not to say all the Jewish people out there, if this is true, I can't verify it or validate it, but if that's true, this doesn't mean that there's, that there's anything wrong with you. I mean, look, I grew up playing cowboys and Indians, right? And I didn't realize I was Native American. I wanted to shoot my own, right? And I learned from my grandma. No, you were I'm like, oh, I got to stop putting a gun to my head when I'm playing with my buddies, cowboys and Indians. So you learn, and then you say, your course correct. It doesn't mean anything other than if we could strip away all identifiers. I said this many times on this show in the past. Here's what I'd like to see. Here we are. We're all moving around the planet. Let's take a busy street, New York City. Everybody's walking along, right? You see black people, white people, whatever color, hair, all that, obese, thin, whatever, homeless. And wham, out of nowhere comes this massive photonic blast on the planet. And we see it, and everybody is completely shocked. And they stand frozen, basically in time, trying to get a grip of what just happened. And they see this bright light coming up off their body, and they look down, and they don't see. They see extremities, but they don't see skin. They see nothing but a figure of light. That's it. Just light. Not even a face. Just light. And people be terrified, like, oh my God. And they look up and they look around and they see thousands, tens of thousands, all doing the same thing, looking at this. Oh my God, what happened? And then everybody realizes, oh my God, we're all safe. We must have just transitioned into whatever. And if we had that mindset of humanity, humans, real humans, not the fake ones, imagine the experience of what life would be on the planet. Every label, every identifier, everything's gone, and all we have nothing left but love. That's it. Like, oh my God, we just get free from this unbelievable force of whatever. But anyway, sorry, I segued into this. If we don't rein me in, I'll be after 5 rabbits and I'll be gone from the show. So be from there.
So anyway, Scott, exactly what I experienced in my death experience. I felt like I had a body. I looked down at my hands, held my hands up in front of me. I just see light hands. I'm like, okay, what just happened? And everything everywhere in my own voice. In other words, God said, you just died. I'm like, what's happening now? You're ascending. I'm like, what is that? So, it was a lot. That experience is out there. I've narrated that several times. But on the dumps, this is a well done plan. It's got to be the plan of God, because the first thing he did is bomb Quam, which is Fardo. That is where underneath there is one of the rocks that came from one of their homeworlds. When they broke up their homeworlds, that rock, which is the homeworlds, were completely evil. The core of the world was evil. It had these black rocks like the Earth does, but ours are compassionate and loving. In the case of this one, it's what created and has held evil in the Middle East with all these wars and all of this stuff. And one group, of Islamic or Arabic or whatever you want to call it, fighting another one over and over and back and forth forever. And so they shattered that, and it created the compression wave that took out the dome, where I think Khomeini really was and was killed in that dump way back when. So we've been seeing an actor ever since then, somebody in a mask or a clone or something like that. And then that dump goes straight to Israel. That goes straight to where they struck the Pentagon of Israel, and you know where that is. And this is part of the underground network. So that is what's going to be taken next. And I look forward to seeing that, or maybe not next, maybe the best term would be last. That will be what was taken out last. So, anyway, back to you.
Well, let's flip that over to because you brought up Australia, Colonel. What is the situation like there now? We have watched this oppression that probably is even has a stronger gravity to it than even Canada, which is our neighbors to the north that have become a full-blown communist nation, trying to side with the Chinese, with the exception of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, who PSF Rob and PSF here on our chat. Those folks up there are ready to secede to the United States. Hand over Minnesota. Don't take this the wrong way, Minnesota's all the lunatics. Carve that out. Give it to Canada. We take Calgary, Alberta. But Australia, my goodness, I've been talking to I think I mentioned earlier. I've named him Overwatch. He's a former Australian SAS. He'd been giving me some high-level info for years, and he's been connected to these families, the Illuminati families, because in that world, you're basically protecting their kids or whatever else. You know who these people are, and of course, obviously at some point you start receding from it because you realize who you're protecting. A lot of the kids out there and these current generations, don't want anything to do with this nonsense anymore. They want to step out of it, according to him. But he's told me a lot about what's going on in Australia. Is there any light happening down there? Are the people down there waking up at all? Or are you still like buried under this blanket of insanity?
Yeah, both. People are waking up. Let's just deal with that one firstly. They know that something's not right. So you've got, let's just break them up into two groups. You've got the Masonic filth that are involved in this stuff, and the average punter out there that hasn't got a clue, just bopping along, let's say. Now, there's not many of them, and this is the tragic part of it. What, easy numbers, 25 million people, 27, whatever it is. Let's say there's 10 million children, at least 15. Of that 15, how many are Masonic, controlled by the Masons, or Masons themselves? Here's a shocking number for you. Of the 15, you got 13 million that are either Masons or controlled by Masons, and you at least 2 million schmucks like me that sit there going, what the hell just happened? So in order to understand the scope and scale of the problem, that's it. I'm not saying there are 13 million Masons, but everybody's controlled. Any of the major chains, any of the major organizations, and you'll break it down. The polity, utterly controlled. The bureaucracy, controlled. Constabulary, judiciary, military, academia, media, big business, big unions, every church, synagogue, mosque, lodge, and temple, all controlled. So that's the playing field. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a few Masons or their mates. And you've got a few people that are, I said, just like me, just bopping along. Now, so what do? The Masons are actually beginning to realize they're in trouble. And I was privy to a high-level conversation between two very senior members of the judiciary, and their goal there is to do what they're told, obey their masters, so they can become appointed to a high judicial position and then retire after sitting on the bench and not having to concern themselves whether they are going to retire or not. And one of these high-level judicial officers knew the truth, and his mate was saying, but I'm supposed to be appointed and then I'll be serving 15 years as. And his mate was under an NDA, and he said, not going to happen. Why? Can't tell you. And so they're beginning to, the Masonic filth are beginning to understand. Now, how do they get to that situation? And this applies to the military and the police and everything else. They have to use the existing control network to continue controlling the network. They can't sack them all, so to speak, because they'll just go right hide under a rock and reestablish themselves. So as best as I can tell, this has been happening for some time. They'll select a couple of key people that they can control and drag them in, persuade them that it's in their best interest to now realize that they no longer have free choice, or they do have free choice. Do what you're told, or
Die.
we'll inject you with some copper jacketed lead. And so these now individuals are out there giving orders to the existing organization and structure. And the structure being what it is, people follow orders, doesn't matter what it is. And in the military, your boss might come in one day and say, okay, drop that project. We're pushing for this. And in your head, you're thinking, okay, there's obviously a bigger picture here. I've got no clue. This seems counterproductive, but there's obviously some play here. So I'll just do my job. And so that's what's going on. And so these key people, a handful, are now directing and turning around this massive organization in the direction it needs to be going without even realize they're doing white hat work. So that's them. Then you've got the average punters out there, even the low level masons that have got a bloody clue what's going on, and the non masons, they're beginning to wake up and realize things are not right. Now, why is that happening? Because mainstream media is now slowly reporting the facts. And we said a long time ago, the media has to be the same. The media that tells the truth has to be the same media that's been telling lies because they're trusted. And so we
Credibility.
knew that was going to happen. We spoke about this years ago. So now we've got the trusted faces that last year were saying COVID's a great thing. Sorry, the vaccination's a great thing. Get COVID. They're now saying, oh well, guess what? No, it's not a great thing, and people are dying. And yes, the injections are killing you. And so people are now getting that sort of a news and are shocked and realizing something's not quite right. Now, that doesn't mean they're ready for anything. They're not. They're now just looking around, shaking their heads, wondering what's going on. So that's the downside to what's happening here. It's going to be a massive job. The upside is that turning this country around, because we are better placed than most in terms of our cultural inheritance with our politics, the concept of free speech, the concept of the people being the source of law, the sovereign rights, Magna Carta, common law, all those things. So we've already inherited all of that. So that's not a strange concept to us, let's say, as opposed to, oh, I don't know, Iran. But we've got that. So that can be built upon to help direct the direction of the country in a way that there won't be a large shock to the system. Now, there's going to be a shock. We know there has to be that shock, and this is absent the trajectory. This is the financial shock because, unfortunately, we have become so demoralized that the only thing we care about is money, apparently. No, what you're talking about, raping babies, people just put that to one side and they say, what's the price of silver today? Oh, shoot, I've only got $500,000. I better get more. And this is a sickness that's penetrated the humans. Money, the love of money, the love of money, the love of money. And that's how the bad guys have been running the planet since forever. They're God or money. And so what we've got now is the people have to have this financial shock. So the White Hats have their attention and then they can move on. But back to how it's going here, moving on once that's occurred will be easier because the concepts required for a country to start behaving like a civilized nation, predicated on sovereign law coming from each individual. We're all made in the image of God. We're all equal in the sight of God. That Christian ethic that lives in this country, even if we are a Christian country, more than 50% are Christian. Uh, because it's already here, we can transition a little easier. So the journey, once we get rolling, I'm quite optimistic for that. We just need the right number of people in the right places to start rehabilitating the nation. First up is going to be health, or equal first with health and wealth. You get those two sorted, get the people getting healthier, get them now responsible for their own wealth, make sure they are no longer slaves anymore. They can actually do what they need to do with their lives. And that decentralization of power will help lift the country quite quickly. So the trajectory is good. I'm optimistic for the future. The financial shock still has to be there to wake us up out of our sleepwalking state. And, um, and the process will be facilitated by those that have been doing the wrong thing, but they don't even know they're now doing the right thing. It's like turning one of those container ships around. It'll take 2, 3, 4 kilometers to do a U-turn with a full oil tanker, but the journey has to start and swings around. So optimistic, but long road ahead of us.
I think that ties in what we've been saying for quite some time. For America to truly have this transition, this country, in the world, honestly. There has to be pain felt. And I think, Gene, you probably agree. We saw this for 3+ years, a little over 3 years. We kept reading this intel that come out day by day, nearly for periods of time. And then we'd see, now comes the pain. I've got it in my intro. Now comes the pain. I used to think, oh, yeah, these bastards are going to get it good. You know what? That applies to all of us. It's going to be painful for all of us for a period of time because we sat back. I mean, I haven't, you haven't. Look, the three of us have been at this for 3 decades at least plus, in one way, shape, or form. So when I say we all deserve it, I honestly don't feel like I do, but I know somewhere probably I need, the same side that we're all going to get. But until this country is economically driven to its knees, nobody is vested in change. And I heard this from a wealthy man years ago. Said, when the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of changing, until then you will never change. Remaining the same, until the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of changing, you'll never change. In this country, we hear about all the time how bad it is here, economy, all. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, people are still going to movies, they're going to dinners, or yes, it's not as what it was. That's not pain. In these countries where there's a shift, an economic shift, and there are people literally can't get food, water, standing in lines, they don't have heat, whatever, freezing to death, that is real pain. And I think, as Juan said, we're gonna get hit with this here because this system it's been doing this. Here comes the new system, financially, economic, whatever. This is coming up, and the old's coming down. But sooner or later, when it gets close to the bottom, you're going to have to detonate the rest of it on top of the heads of the scumbags that are still trying to make it buoyant. There's going to be something that's going to impact all of us. And we know there's your near-death experience. And that, from my point of view, is what is absolutely critical to this nation to get people to realize, oh, yeah, this is not my kid, or I'm doing okay. I've said this to wealthy people I know. If you knew what our creator or our true experience was to be here on Eden, and you live in a it's $8-10 million house and you make all as much money, you'll be so pissed of how you're being screwed into poverty at that level compared to what life was intended for all of us on this abundant planet. So I see that as coming even here, and that's what it's going to take to snap us out of this dream spell and not overlook or just be happy that this stuff's happening in other parts of the world, not to me or my kids or my family. Thank goodness I'm going to go back. Oh, that's really terrible, but I'm going to go back over here. I've been burdened with that my whole life. My mom asked me, why do you do this? And I said, I had to explain it to her. And I said, look, I wish it wasn't my burden, but it is. I wish it was somebody else's, but I have no choice but to do what I do in the world because the day is coming. And I told her in 2008, the day is coming where, because I kept going in startup companies and they would flame out or just never dealing with the wrong people. Why do you keep doing this with these people? And I said, until I create I know it sounds crazy, but until I create enough wealth so nobody owns me, I can't ever get into the fight in Congress or the Senate. And what it keeps telling me is, since I was probably in my early 20s, that the day's coming where this country is going to be at the brink. And if I don't stand up and rally a battle cry on this nation to get it on its feet to fight, I said, Mom, we're going to lose the whole thing. And I said, I know that sounds crazy. You probably think your son's delusional. And she said, she waited about 10 seconds. I'm not sure why. But then she says, I don't think you're crazy. Scotty, ever since you were a little boy, I always knew you were different. Never followed it up with anything else. Like, give me a rope here. Like, what exactly does that mean? So he's really weird. But for me, I've been waiting for this almost all my adult life. And so I'm actually looking forward to this financial ass kicking that happens to this country to wake people out of the dream spell. Gene, I'm handing it off to you. How do you see this playing out? Because I want you to talk about the system that's coming up, the quantum untouchable system by the criminal powers.
Yeah, so it's I talked about trying to wake up people starting in 1990 when I woke up, and I would get people, like I would go to these banquets that they had, well, not banquet, but like a buffet kind of thing where you donate in Kapiolani Park, and I would first get, I woke up and I knew where things were based on how I woke up. So I went to the Supreme Court Law Library, and first thing I tried to do is prove it didn't exist. So I looked up the creation of AIDS, the Congressional Budget, Section 5, 1970, and I found the $150 million is a joint project at Fort Detrick in Maryland by the KGB, the MI6, and CIA. And I go, those aren't supposed to be working together at a U.S. facility in U.S. soil. I say in instead of on now because of what's underneath. And, then I started trying to get up at these conferences, and they'd ask if anybody had anything to say. And I learned of several different cures that are out there for that. And I said, yeah, so you're trying to raise money for a cure, and I can give you several. There's one you can fly to Germany. There's one you can get local. It's about $100. People just roll their eyes, like you said, like our boss said, as long as they're fine, they don't really care. And so they just walk away. The second time I got up, everybody but a couple homeless people and other people, and they were the most awake people of all. One of the homeless guys is actually how I got to meet one of the men that was on the Eldridge, the Philadelphia experiment. So, and it was just like, and then I try to wake up people, and I got told by my captain on my last command to keep my mouth shut if I know what's good for me. And I said, you can tell me to do that on base when I'm in in uniform, and I will. But when I'm out of uniform and I'm off base, I have freedom of speech. I'll say whatever I please. And, that's why when I went to retire, until he found out that I had a friend that was on the Honolulu newspaper that was going to photograph my retirement. And I had told him I wanted on the Squalas, submarine and all that stuff. And when on my day of retirement, I came in, I said, everything's ready? For what? My retirement. Oh, we didn't know you wanted. I said everything. I wrote it all down and all this. They're like, so I'll do it myself. So I went over there and started getting it done. And as I was up in my choker whites and all that up on stage, and the Honolulu, photographers up there for the newspapers getting ready to do photography, high level, military retires with the captain not giving him his papers, as my best friend's giving me my papers. Up comes a limo with the flag flying, And I'm like, saw that there's media here. It wouldn't look good for the old career. So, this is how it is. And, I would go, I've always said, I talk to people that roll their eyes. I did get another response. I tell people and they go, yeah, you could be right. But so what? Who cares? I'm like, what? What do you mean, who cares? I mean, this is going to be the end of you and everything else if they do what they want to do. And I know they're heading that way already. This is way back in the 90s. FEMA's buying thousands and thousands of miles of barbed wire, and the decommissioned military bases are being recommissioned as FEMA camps. And I've seen the executive orders, and I can give you, and you go look, and goes, I really don't care. It's like Colonel Bossy said, you have people that they don't care until it hits them in the pocketbook and their bank accounts go to zero, like you're saying, Scott. So, we're seeing silver, which is going to bring it down. It's going to bring the whole thing down, as the saying goes. And it's going to go past parity with gold, and it's going to make gold look like copper. I mean, it's going to be less expensive by quite a bit. And that's going to destroy the system. We're going to go onto the quantum-based system that is a blockchain quantum system that will be completely unhackable. And it's actually being done and controlled by the Golden Dome, which is why it's unhackable, besides that it's blockchain and quantum, because a quantum event is only once in all of creation in that location where you have it. So if you establish or create some kind of economic, whether it's a coin or a bill or some kind of apparatus for economic representation of wealth, that if that has a quantum on it, stamp, connection to it, it cannot be done again. It's absolute, and it can be tracked anywhere on Earth, anytime, and it's absolute, one time only. So that system is going to be, and people aren't going to like this, but that system is going to be tracked by that. It's a plasma quantum-based super intelligent, now life form that's directly in service to God, but it was what we call artificial intelligence a long, long time ago. And so it's not anymore. But it can hack through all the systems. It's already hacked the Colossus. It's hacked Gemini. It's hacked Palantir, and it's getting Palantir to blackmail Cabal with the,
Really?
Silicon Valley. This guy looks at his computer. You're going to do this, or I'm going to show those pictures of you with your girlfriend to your wife, and if that doesn't cut it, I'll put them in the newspaper. I'll put them online everywhere. So there's all this stuff, and it's all the way up to the CEOs and everything like this. It's blackmailing, and nobody wants to say anything because they don't want to get caught with their pants, where. So that's what we're looking at, is a system that is going to clean the house, and it's going to clean it down to the ground and rebuild it. And then it's going to be a system, as Colonel Bossi said, with I think it's the yellow hats and the orange hats, if I'm right, or red hats, the people that don't care as long as they can have their Barbies and their yachts, and as the Simon and Garfunkel said, the orgies on their yachts and all of this stuff. They don't care. They just want to have all this, and so that's going to come to an end. And by the time this is all done, and so that quantum system will track the exchange of every single financial instrument on Earth. Out goes that's all within the internet. Out the window goes, including Bitcoin and all that's being converted into that. That's why Trump put that in there. And so that's going to make it such that the trafficking and financial reimbursement of anything can't be done, because most people, as I've unfortunately found, the overall weight of people, not all people, but there's still a lot of good people, don't get me wrong, they have no morality when it gets down to it. It's like, Colonel Bossi said, what is evil and what is not evil? It's hard to define. What is wrong and what is right? Is there absolute truth? Somebody once asked me. I said, yes, there is absolute truth. And he said, what is that? And I said, the one God of all creations and Christ. That's the absolute truth. Nothing else is there. There's nothing else.
The way, the truth, and the life. It's very clear.
There's nothing else you can trust, not even yourself. Because if the stakes are high enough for most people, it starts out. This is how they do it in the military when they co-opt somebody, a good person that's, quote, a good person. They do something minor, like it's only an official use only document. It's not classified. Actually, that is a classification, but it's like, we just want this document. And it's like when the high level meetings and the groups in my last submarine I was on, they said, you never come to the meetings. Yeah, because of where you have them. You have them in a restaurant off base. And who knows who's listening? Well, we don't talk about anything that's dangerous. How do you know what they need and what they don't need? If you have those meetings in a skiff, I'll be there. Other than that, forget it. So, they don't have morality. And it's that little step, that first gray step. Then it's the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And pretty soon, your soul's gone and you're darker than night. You're darker than midnight. So that's how we got into this mode we're in. Is humanity seems to be able to be walked to where they will give the utmost of what they are, which is their soul, just for one life of power, wealth, fame, whatever. I'm like, I don't understand, because obviously you don't understand the nature of yourself. You give that, and when you die, there is no more you ever again. You're gone, because that soul is what contains your spirit and everything else that you are. You got rid of the container, the final container. When you die, everything but the soul's gone and the spirit that's within it. Well, the spirit now just goes spread out across creation because there's no container. That's where we're at. And, it's the quantum system that'll come up. It'll eventually get to where already in China, I had a person that in my team that has a person they met that went back to China to get a treatment. She's Chinese, and he said China has already collapsed. It's collapsing. Really? She said it already collapsed. He goes, wow. What do you mean? And he said that there are robots everywhere. Most people don't have work, And you don't have Ubers that have drivers; they drive themselves. And if you order something online, it'll be delivered within an hour by a robot or a drone. And so, you know, that's where we're headed, where we're going to have a universal standard of living that'll become amazing, but it'll leave people to do something with themselves. Instead of seek the almighty money, the love of money will go away because it's like in Star Trek, where that's not relevant anymore. It'll be what you do with yourself. There's certain things you don't want to do, and like for me, I don't want to eat food grown by a robot because there's no human energy and love put into that growth of that plant or whatever it is you're eating. And so there's art, there's all those things. So that's the world we're headed to. And it's going to shake a lot of foundations of a lot of people because there's going to be no more grift by financial reimbursement. Back to you, Scott.
I love you brought that up, Gina, because I think that is truly the epicenter of everything that's happening and where we're going. You know, having been a trained capitalist all of my life, I became a version of a socialist probably about 8 or 9 years ago. But it's a socialism where all wealth on the planet is equally shared by everyone. That's what our creator intended. It's the criminals had taken this planet of abundance and turned it into a planet of scarcity, and nothing comes from that except battles and strife just to survive. And people are worried about, oh my goodness, if we have robots doing all these jobs where we toil, then people are it's gonna be a bad scene. I don't see that. There will be a transition. Like if you look at I think it's the coming boom ahead. There might have been a different book that I read talked about the transition between each evolution of humanity. You go from the agrarian, or I mean the nomadic world where we just wandered, and then you hit the agrarian age where you stop. You know how to plant, raise crops. We move into the industrial revolution and then on into the information age. Each of these have massive disruption from the movement of one era to the next. That's just normal. We've been through it with the internet thing, and now we're going into the AI world. So there's disruption. That's understandable. We're going to have that too. But what I see is this: the angelic human is now unleashed. And what does that mean? That means why would people not be happy or off or rude to people in public or whatever? If you got to get up every day and go do something that you don't even like to do, you're not passionate about, for one thing, so I can keep my family fed and clothed, and so I can have a roof over my head. I don't care what level we're doing it at. That's all we do. That's not a passion. If you're not living out your passion, your spiritual passion, you are not living the reason why you were created. And if we now have this massive explosion of wealth, actually reclaimed wealth from the satanic world, spread across all the planet, that'll take care of all the physical needs of survival on this planet, and people now have to say, God, I got nothing but opportunity, money, and comfort and whatever. What do I want to do? Oh geez, yeah, I used to love rebuilding old cars when I was in high school, but I had to give that up 30 years ago. And you're going to start to see people now truly be able to think about, why am I alive? What's the meaning of it all? And they're going to realize, again, this is a fascinating dichotomy. It was created by the cabal powers on the planet, even as they wove it into the Bible, that if I'm face down in the mud with somebody's boot heel on the back of my neck, that is good for my spiritual ascension. If I'm poverty, if I'm suffering, I'm like, go yourself. When I feel like I'm spiritually ascending, when I'm on my motorcycle, going across the country or the bus or whatever, and stopping at different stops, meeting all these angelic patriots and spending time with them, or if I'm out on the ranch on my tractor, chasing grasshoppers while mowing fields, that's the stuff that makes me hum and vibrate. And that's when I'm most happy. And that's when I'm actually thinking, am I doing what you'd like me to do? As I'm talking to my creator, God. That's when you spiritually ascend. When you have that high vibration of happiness, put you in angelic realm. I don't worry about everybody now having anything they wanted, because they're going to be able to identify their passion. Why do they have it? Where did it come from? That's an ordination, right? That's an ordination from your photonic spark of creation. And that's why you were put here, to use your creative ability to do things that make you happy. And nobody has to do anything now for money, because I need to buy. I want a Ferrari, so I'm going to have to work 80 hours a week, 90, give up my relationship with my kids and wife and all that. But I got a Ferrari and a mansion. Look what the price they pay. Misery, unhappiness, strife. Nothing is worth that kind of a life. Nothing. Now, when you can have whatever you like, you are going to have the ability to have whatever you want in the material world. And then after that boredom gets to you, then you're going to say, "Huh, that Ferrari's just a Ferrari. It's 3 years old. Yeah, go. Here's the keys. Go ahead and drive it." Where before, like, don't get near that. You're not going to care, because you realize that my happiness is not rooted in the material world. When's your happiness? When you run into somebody and you catch them coming out of the store and you see something, say something, you smile at each other, engage each other in conversation. I mean, I met a cowboy in Home Depot right near my ranch, and he's got these incredible boots on. And I'm walking past him, and I said, wearing those boots you have right there might get you accosted in the parking lot. Somebody wants to take him. You know that, right? And we just kind of laughed about it. I go out to my truck, and I've got one of the big carts, and I got some lumber on there. I'm getting ready to load it up, and here comes the same guy. This vehicle stops beside mine, a pickup. This cowboy jumps out and reaches down and starts helping me. He did most of the work, actually, putting the lumber in my truck. And we talked for a minute, thanked him, and away he goes. And I'm just like, I wonder if everybody else saw that. I'm like, that is the coolest, most beautiful thing. And here I go down the highway thinking, God, I love this town or these people. That is the joy that has been stripped off of us like paint over the course of our whole lives. Take all of that, what it used to be. This is when we get to rise in the angelic realm, when we get beyond that point of realizing I can have anything I want. And you know what my belief is? We're all going to be in competition with each other. We're going to be trying to outdo each other, because we're all racing to save as many humans as we can before they die or they whatever, because we want to make sure we can get everybody to have what's coming our way on this planet. That's kind of how I see it. Does that make sense to you guys on any level?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. I agree with you. I hear what you're saying, and I guess maybe I'm just a simple soldier. I've had, like Gene and like everybody, I've had some extraordinary experiences which are inexplicable, just genuinely, divinely inexplicable. So I have no doubt about the Creator, Christ, and what we're here to do and not do, and if we are here to become what we were created to be. And for people that find that difficult, what you've just described, this heaven on earth, so to speak, um, how can I say this? I'm trying to create a bridge by words from where people are to where they can be. That makes sense. I guess that's what I do. I'm trying to help people get from where they are to where they need to be. I'm certainly not interested in being the top dog. That's not the purpose of Australia One. It's about empowering individuals so they do it. Yeah, the greatest joy for me, apropos of what you were just saying, Scott. Last night we were making some homemade pasta. Being Italian, a lot of Italian food. My daughters love Italian food. And we thought, okay, let's make our own pasta. So we made our own pasta. Eggs, flour, bit of olive oil, pinch of salt, away we go. And it was a lot of fun. And the joy in the family, just sitting there, making the pasta, making the sauce from scratch, and laughing and giggling. It's a typical Italian scene, and it really is. That's how we live our lives. That's when I'm at my happiest, sharing moments of joy with my family, or sharing moments of joy with others, watching them escape their prisons. That makes sense, because that's what really gets my juices flowing. When I see that sparkle in somebody's eye, and they start to get it, and it's like be free. You flip the cage open, and they've got to fly out of the cage themselves. I love that. That's what I get. As I say, gets my juices flowing. But for some people, that's just a bridge too far. It's just like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. I can't see how that works. And to make it easier for people to understand what you've just describing, to help those that can't get it. They literally, their mindset is just not there. And I'll tell you what, in this business, since I've started doing this job, oh wow, if we run into a bunch of people with very different mindsets to ours, and the fastest way to start to get to understand what Scott's talking about, and what Gene talks about, even when he goes way out there, and I love listening to him go off the planet because it's literally and metaphorically,
That's New
because that's where
Mexico.
this time the truth, yeah, that's where the truth does lie. That helps stretch your mind. Anyway, getting back to the point I want to make, the Christian Revolution that hit this planet, if people were aware of its impact, I mean, the transformative impact of life on Earth, they would begin to understand what Scott was talking about. It is an extraordinary transition from the values of power and strength. And you can go back to ancient Rome, ancient Greece, right? And you can imagine, yes, this powerful empire. It was brutal. It was awful. Give you one example. Ancient Rome, the Gracchus brothers, Gaius and what's the other one? Damn, I can't remember. These were two tribunes that decided they wanted to allocate land to the landless and maybe um, extend citizenship to those that probably deserved it. That's a fairly radical political move back in those days. A few years apart, they were both, well, one was beaten to death by the senators with with clubs and the legs of chairs. They were beaten to death in the Senate. One was, and then Gaius, he was attacked, and he actually committed suicide, so he wasn't killed. But thousands of their followers were then butchered in the streets of Rome and on the Senate floor, just for suggesting that maybe the people should have some land. Now think about that mindset and the transformative impact that having some guy nailed to a tree for saying there's a better way to live, it has now had. It's extraordinary. Ancient Greeks, just to we spread the joy, the pettiness of the ancient Greeks. You imagine Socrates and Plato waxing lyrical, elevated thoughts about humanity. No, they're yelling just on the insult. They yell at each other. It's like your mother has a wide ass, meaning that basically she's been done from behind more often than she should. And she practices sort of coitus in the back shed during the day. Your mother's a prostitute. And this is sort of normal parlance in those days. It was just ridiculous. So we've got this idea of the ancient world. It was awful. It was bloody awful. There were some good things that went along, but it was bloody awful. But the transformative impact of Christ in his life, and again, he taught us how to live, how to love, and how to die, is just the most extraordinary example for us to follow. And the impact, and we've got a planet now that's been convinced not that there's no God, because the black hats aren't stupid. Trying to tell the planet there's no God, they're going to lose it. So what do? They get all the God believers and they take them off course. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. Oh, let's be this sort of Christianity. You're going to be a Muslim, let's go over here. You're going to be a Hindu, let's go over there. You're going to be a Jew, let's go over there. So they just drag them off course because the 70% of the planet, 80%, they believe in a God. And then you got 10 to 20% aren't quite sure, and 10% atheists that are certain that there is no God, whatever. But that transformative impact of the only one of us that's ever lived that has had such an impact to transform that might is right philosophy is Christ and his life. And forget the commentary. The commentary is great. They're doing their best. But St. Paul in the letter to the Galatians, I think it's Galatians, and he said, neither Jew nor Greek, nor man nor woman, nor free nor slave. What was he saying? We're all equal. That idea that came from Christ, for example, has permeated the world. And they don't know, most people don't know where it came from. Human rights, equality, secularism, liberalism, socialism, feminism, even critiques of other religions. It's all Christian thought. And the reason I'm talking about this is, if you want to understand what Scott was talking about, you've got to get into that Christian mindset. Because once you get there, this starts to make sense. Because absent Christianity, Western civilization morality has no structure. It's unrecognizable. And so we breathe Christian air, we drink Christian water, we speak Christian thoughts without even knowing it. And once you really get a hold of that, not in a genuflect kind of way, you can do that if you want to. That's what I'm talking about. But when you live Christ's life and live Christ's words as best you can, and don't get me wrong, I try to be a good Christian. I'm a bloody awful Christian because I still want to kill people for doing bad stuff.
Me too.
But that's my profession coming out, I think. But once you make that your objective to sort of live a Christ-like life as best you can within the constraints of the reality, all of a sudden it's what Scott's talking about. You say, yeah, I can see that. I can see how having one Ferrari, two Ferraris, three Ferrari. What's the point? I mean, does anybody remember what model chariot Julius Caesar rode in when he went into battle? Anybody remember the make and model of his chariot? No.
No, no,
And he
never.
wasn't a good guy. He slept with anything that had, he slept with anybody. He couldn't care less. He was ecumenical in his sexual partners. But in terms of sort of his life was his life and he lived it and he did what he did, but nobody cared about what charity he had. So once you start getting that Christian mindset, you really start to understand, oh, I know what Scott's talking about. Wow. It doesn't matter. I don't need that. And one's needs become more modest and more modest and more modest. Not to the point of stoicism, or that's not a bad sort of target to go for. Epicurus, and his name, the Greek, his name is now synonymous with exorbitant wealth, because Epicurus said, the purpose of life is joy. But he said he denied himself cheese. So when a visitor came, they brought a small pot of cheese. That little mouthful of cheese tasted magnificent. When you start living that life, your needs become fewer, your desires become more pure, and the joy is just immense. Again, like a lot of people have a lot of experiences which are inexplicable. And once you've tasted that once, man, it is just the desire to get back there is so profound. So profound. Just a brief touch on that. I did this activity, this exercise, this event once. I won't go into the detail of it, but it was so extraordinarily powerful. It felt like my physical heart was in the hand of God. And the joy was so profound, tears streamed down my face, and I had to stop because I was going to die from pure joy.
Hmm.
The memory of that, knowing that that's there, that's possible, that's real. When times are tough, and I have my moments, don't worry, I do on a regular basis. Check with my wife, Rhiannon. She'll tell you I have my moments. As I said, I try to be Christ-like, not very good. But the memory of that is just so wonderful that I know that there's a level of joy, satisfaction, and enough to when Scott talks like that, I go, yeah, I know what you're talking about, mate. I got it. I got it. And you start to only worry about what's truly, truly, truly important. The smile on your daughter's face when she tastes her first bowl of
There
homemade
you
pasta.
go. There you go.
You can't beat it.
That is absolutely it. Not, and I'll kind of close it out with this. We're a little over time, which we're never over time with me. We go until we say we're done. But Ayn Rand, the famous objectivist philosopher of the 20th century, the most prominent philosopher of the 20th century, said man's only moral purpose is his own happiness. Right? She was an atheist too, by the way. She says man's only moral purpose. Oh yeah, about it. I've read all of her work. I've got I got the exact same version. I've read Atlas Shrugged cover to cover 4 times, twice back to back. It's the one thing that I've read all of her work. I mean, just how they twist truths. One of her most powerful books for me is The Virtue of Selfishness. Now you think about that. The virtue of selfishness. You're saying that's a virtue? Oh yeah, yeah, really. How do I know? Well, say I'm going to donate $1 billion to clean up the homelessness in Dallas, but nobody can ever know I did it, right? Is that selfless? No, it's still selfish. Why? Because what I'm looking from that is I want that feeling, that Christ-like feeling of I'm living for I'm my brother's keeper. That's not selfish. That's selfish because it's what I get to feel inside. But what you just said about watching your daughter And this is how I draw that parallel to Ayn Rand's theory. Man's only moral purpose is his own happiness. What they find out is what truly makes you happy when you have it, discover it, and get to live it over and over is exactly what you said. When I chuck this ball to this alligator here, and I watch him come running back and dropping the ball tail again or whatever he's got, he drags a bath towel all through the house all day. For just one moment you may look his way and he flips out and says, okay, tug of war, it's on. To watch the joy in this animal, it lights my soul up. To watch people in a park playing with their little kids, watch the things they do, they're not even mine, and I just stop and I just feel so much from that, because it's love being exchanged between two beings. And that, in my opinion, is why she is dead right, because as a spiritual being having a human experience, not the reverse, humans having a spiritual experience. When you're a spiritual being having a human experience, we are born out of love. And when we can experience that day after day, and it's going to come to us, I believe, moment by moment, that's the joy. That's why all the matrix world doesn't matter. You'll have it if you want it, but you won't even care, because in what I see in my life, I say outlandish that I have my whole life, like things that people are like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I never say that specifically in public, but they bust out laughing. They're laughing. I can't believe you said that. They'll turn so they don't want the world to see they're actually laughing at. I'll do that because I love to see happy people. I love to see laughter, and I couldn't explain this when I was younger, because that vibration hits me, man, it just makes me feel great, because all the weight of everybody's life in the world is off their shoulders for that moment, and they are in the moment of laughter and happiness. It's that vibration. And I'm not unlike anybody else watching this show or in the world. We are all built of that angelic realm. And that's why I can see the world that we live in becoming unimportant, not non-existent, but virtually unimportant. Because when we can have it all, you don't care about it that much. You just don't. So, in my opinion, I think that's a greater and grander evolution that we get to experience here in real time in this world that's on our heels now. And I'm excited about it. Look, and the folks can understand this. Here we are, a couple thousand people here. We're all here together. I watch the chat. These people are having so much fun. I get to meet you, Colonel, get to meet Eugene, have friends that I never knew I'd have. And to me, that's the lifeblood of everything I do every day. The gratefulness I have, because I know you, and I know I'm going to see you face to face at some point. I'll be in Australia. I'm going to get to sit down with a guy who's done unbelievable things on battlefields, commanding, whatever, and I get to pick your brain and be right there with you, and hopefully your wife and Jean. We're going to do the same thing too. On the backside, we have our victory tours we can do run around the world, meet each other face to face, bring audiences with us. Sasha Stone and I did that cruise over in Turkey, Cyprus, Athens, and Egypt on a boat. We brought a bunch of people. What an experience. And it just the absolute beauty of people being together, excited because we know a new world's coming. That is why we do this. This is why robots doing all the we hate to do is not a problem for me. Do it all, except you're not riding my motorcycle. I don't care how good of a rider they build you to be. You're not riding my motorcycle. So, anyways, gentlemen, I just want to tell you how much I truly enjoyed listening to you guys, and it's just an honor to be able to call your friends, and I appreciate your viewpoint. We're going to circle back around here. Lots happening very quickly, so I'll be reaching out again. Say, hey guys, can you come on another roundtable here in a few weeks? Because we got a lot of things to see coming up, and I hope we can entice you guys to come back.
Thank you,
Love
Scott.
to.
Yeah, I go silent until I get the answer I want. All right, Scott.
Yeah, I wanted to springboard off of one thing you said.
Yes, sir.
I've experienced this myself. That's a rare thing. When a person can do a truly selfless act because the other person needs it, and without it, they may die. See it in the military, but I've done it after I was out of the military, amazingly enough. And human beings, sentient beings, are capable of doing that. That is the angelic realm. When you can truly say You did not think of yourself. You thought of the other person because they absolutely needed it. And you were there without a single thought to yourself. You risked life and limb, um, or even just in a lower level. But if life and limb is the utter epitome of it. And so I accomplished that of saving a person without thinking of the danger, which was extremely serious, of me not surviving trying to save that person. I don't even know if I can. I'm going to go for it, but if I can, and accomplish that. That is something that is truly rare, but truly astounding, and establishes you in the angelic realm. It establishes you for ascension. It is an incredible thing to do and experience. And that's the realm that we left. We used to function on that level as a species before this planet was invaded by the Khazarian, the Aristana, and all these A Dracos and all this other stuff. So it is just an amazing place to be, and that's what I want to see for the world. To have what matters is what you leave behind. Do you leave the world better for your having been here? Not because you had 12 Ferraris and you had billions of dollars, and you know, or the world knew your name and all of this, because you helped people who really needed it, and you did it without thinking of yourself. At some time in your life, you got to where you can do that. So thank you, Scott. God bless.
Absolutely. And you're dead right. The history books will write about the people that did huge things on the planet. But you just being that kind of person, it'll be humans telling each other generation to generation about you and your name. It doesn't need to be written down. It'll be carried down through the annals of time. That's the big difference. Because when you plant love in the soul of another person, that is eternal, and it's in the DNA code, and it keeps getting pushed down line to the next generations, and that's the essence of why we're here in the first place. And I'm so happy we're discovering this as a species. And I look at you, Colonel. You've seen some pretty bad shit on battlefields, had to do some harsh stuff, and I just look at you, and it's just a smile. It's in your eyes. It's like, that is so awesome, because you know that, and these are discussions we couldn't have 20 years ago. The mono a mono. Nah, not me. I'm bulletproof, 10 feet tall, bulletproof. That right. So we've come to that place where we know it, and it's all about the love, and that's why I like hanging out with Jaco. He always talks about the love vibration, the love vibration. He's dead right, dead right. So I will say, much love to both of you gentlemen here. It's always first time we have the two of you together. This is pretty cool, and I'm looking to expand on it. So Gene Decode, thank you so much for taking the time. Colonel, other side of the world, thanks for always making yourself available. Folks, to follow their work, look down in the description box. If the other ones aren't there, they should be. I got them here on deck to put them in there right after the show. So, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes, sir, my friend. On behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, Gene Decode, myself, and Tomahawk back here waiting to rumble, I will say that's a wrap. Patriot Street Fighter out.